Welcome to another episode of Healing Her Halo. I'm joined with the wonderful Laura Saltman. She's a certified mindfulness meditation teacher and an author of 4 metaphysical books in a series called The All. She has trained with spiritual life coaches, Reiki masters, clairvoyants, mediums, and meditation gurus all over the country and has become a teacher and trainer herself. She currently works as a corporate wellness coach and a workshop facilitator with companies all over the world. Laura, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me. I love to talk about mindfulness. I love to bring it into people's world and kind of explain it to them and what it is and how it can work for them and why, most important, why it might not be working for some people. Because while it is for everyone, it is not a practice that is easy. I instead of it being, what's my phrase for it? It's not a quick fix. It's a slow IV drip. Right.
So let's talk about that. So what are some common misconceptions about mindfulness that we should probably know about?
Well, I think people think that, first of all, like, oh, I'm going to practice mindfulness and then my whole life is going to change overnight. And that's just not the process. Changing our mind and our belief systems and learning to be aware and awake to what's happening in the moment is challenging. We're fighting sometimes decades and decades of programming that we've had, whether it's culturally, whether it's in your family, whether it's because of your gender, whatever the programming is. You have to build new beliefs. You have to change your mindset, and that definitely takes time. I think another myth is that it's woo-woo and it's spiritual.
Yeah.
And actually, mindfulness has been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So
Very true.
right.
Very
so
true.
It's worked for many people. I think there's actually a belief around mindfulness that it's meditation. And there is mindfulness meditation, but you don't have to be a meditator in order to practice mindfulness.
Okay. So what is the difference between practicing mindfulness and practicing meditation?
So mindfulness is about being in now. It's being present in the moment to what is and not judging what is, sort of just surrendering to the moment. At the end of the day, the only moment that we truly have is now. This moment just happened and now it's in the past. You and I are going to talk about something next, and that's the future. But the only moment that we're currently in is this now moment. And that's where true change happens. So it's about being in now. Meditation is that practice of getting rid of the thoughts and trying to get to a place of no thought, right? Where you have no thought whatsoever. Now, that's very, very challenging. And I also believe that as much as meditation is trying to get us to a place of no thought, I think that meditation can be many different things to many different people, because I think the challenge to get to no thought is such a mountain to climb that sometimes if you're a tennis pro and a tennis player and you're on the court and all you're kind of thinking about is the lobbing back and forth and all of your other thoughts are gone, that's a form of meditation because you've gotten rid of usually the critical voice in your mind, and now you're just kind of flowing in the moment, which then takes you back to mindfulness, which is what mindfulness is about, being in the moment, being in now.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking about the word flow, and you said it before I could even say it, about that even creatively, because I'm a writer, and then creatively, sometimes I get into this space where I'm just with whatever is coming into my spirit, like a song or a poem or whatever the case, but I'm not thinking about anything else. And I'm in this like flow state. I'm really curious, what inspired you to get into this work that you're doing right now? And I know you're Emmy-nominated producer, writer. You've talked with celebrities all over the world. What inspired you to practice mindfulness and study this?
Well, I wish I had a story that was, exciting and happy, but like you, it's a tragic story. For me, it was I lost my brother to terminal cancer, and then I lost my dad to suicide. And while I was trying to figure out my grief and how to manage it, I went to grief counseling. I found a life coach. I did whatever I could. I read all these different books, and I found that I was just agitated with life and agitated with my circumstances, and that all these different modalities kind of helped me. And so that's what sort of sent me into the path of spiritual healing, well-being, mental well-being, It definitely was not on my bucket list, you know,
Hmm.
like not at all. From the time I was like a little kid, I wanted to interview celebrities and I wanted to work for Entertainment Tonight. And like, that was my goals in life. If you
Yeah.
asked me at that age, did I want to be a, mindfulness meditation teacher? I would have laughed in your face. Like,
Yeah.
why would I do that? But as you begin to heal, I know you know this too, as your life begins to change from the tragedies of life, and you realize that you can survive things that you thought you never could survive, then it's like you want everybody to know
Yeah.
that that's available to them, because you see so much suffering in the world, and you want to try to heal and ease that suffering. So that's kind of what sent me in that direction. Then, through a series of, again, not on my bucket list, but just kind of floated my way, I started writing books and doing that, and then became an author. And then I was grateful because then I became a best-selling author at one point, which was very exciting. When my book became a
Congratulations.
bestseller, that was an exciting moment for me. And then I sort of fell into corporate wellness. And actually, that happened because of my hosting background and working for Access Hollywood. They were looking someone to host interviews for their platform. And because I had that background, it was easy for me to step into that role and interview people that were talking about mindfulness and meditation and things that I didn't really know a lot about it at the time. So it all just sort of worked together. And I feel like, that's where the universe, God's plan, comes together. And if you're so in your struggle, you don't even see what the bigger sort of plan is for the life experience that you are in right now.
Exactly. And thank you so much for sharing that. And I don't want to scurry past it because you did share something with me that I didn't know. And I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Um, I lost my brother in 2020, and it was a drug related issue.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't wake up from his sleep, and it was COVID, was about to happen, wasn't sure if he was going to be able to have a funeral. It was a scary time, and it took a long time for me to bounce back from that loss, over a year.
Yeah.
And losing two important people in your life.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get back to you, in this sense of who you are, as what you do, in this sort of powerful state as you operate now as this really strong, powerful woman? How did you
What
get back
do they
there?
say? And time. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I love that question, but the honest truth is, I don't think you'll ever be the same person that you were ever. Like, I think when you lose somebody, whether it's your parent that has been your parent for 70 years and then they pass away at 90 something, or whether it's in a tragedy, I just think grief will stay as a part of you forever, and it changes who you are at the core. And I think some of that, people would say like, oh, that's so bad, it's such a horrible thing, but some of who I am now is because of those things that I went through, which, if I'm being honest, has probably made me a better human being than I was before. Because working in Hollywood, you get caught up in some of the noise that's there, and some the perks of the business, and
Hmm.
you get used to the perks of the business, and so you kind of become bigger than life, and you act from that place. And going through those experiences took me off of that pedestal that I put myself up on, and allowed me to really understand the suffering and the pain of other people that I honestly didn't really know about, because I felt like, not that I had a charmed life prior to that, but I had it fairly easy in life. And then, woo, like, the biggest wave came and crashed on me, and it just opened my eyes to something that I didn't know existed. And it's kind of why I shifted out of that very egocentric career into something that was more collective centric.
Wow. You're so honest. You,
I people say that about me. I am very authentic. I don't like bullshit around with people. Like, I think if we're not being our authentic self, then you're not going to help people, and you're not going to even
mhm.
heal yourself. Like, you got to be honest with what you're going through and who you are in the world.
Wow. Honesty and healing, the correlation between those two. And you went through these major transitions,
Yeah.
huge transitions in your life. And I'm sure these moments helped you become more aware. What keeps you aware these days?
Probably working with clients every single day of my life and seeing the suffering that goes on, some of the real tragedies that people have gone through, and then also the micro stuff, because I've worked with people that are, the struggling with the worst thing that's ever happened to them, And I've also worked with people who are literal billionaires, like billionaires, have all the money in the world. And guess what? They got money, but they still got problems. And their
Mm.
problems and their suffering may be different than somebody else's suffering. But it's really given me this massive window into the suffering that exists. I mean, I haven't been witness and I haven't, lived in other third world countries and been a part of that. So I'm more speaking from the level of personal suffering, that one-on-one, and hearing people's their own sort of authentic stories, and just seeing that what I didn't know as a child and even as maybe a teenager and a 20 something is like everybody has things that they are going through, struggles, problems. They might be different problems than you and I have, but they are their problems. And so everybody to me needs therapy, everybody needs a coach, everybody needs
Yeah.
meditation, everybody needs mindfulness, everybody needs to take care of their mental well-being. And so it's just given me that window, and it keeps me on my own path of healing. And the other thing that keeps me on my path of healing is, hey, guess what? You know what? Healing is forever, and you're not going to get to sunshine and rainbows every day and have it stay that way, because that's
Mm.
not the journey we signed up for. We signed up for the contrast. We signed up for some of these ups and downs. So if you think your life is going to be status quo forever, I've got news for you. There's a wave, there's a storm that's going to come your way. And the great thing about mindfulness and meditation is it gives you the tools of how to navigate your storms in life, so that when they do come, and they will come whether they're big or small, some people get a drizzle, some people get
Yeah.
a tsunami, but you will get something. And the more tools that you have in your arsenal, in your toolbox, the easier it will be to navigate through those things that may come your way.
Wow. That's so profound. The contrast. I heard you say that. That really like stuck out to me because there are a lot of ebbs and flows in life. There's never going to be a constant state of happiness. And there,
Yeah.
if it is raining, if there is a storm in your life, there's never going to be this moment where it's always like that forever. So I just want to back up a little bit because I know this is your world. Like this is what you do. This is your service
Yeah.
to to others. So what do you do? Like what is your program? Like how do you help others with their journey of mindfulness, or and you talk about the metaphysical, like how do you get into that, and what is that?
So I have learned to meet people where they are at and kind of understand what that is. What's their belief system? What do they believe in? Definitely don't try to spoon feed, force feed anything to anybody about what my beliefs are. If they're open to it, I will bring out every tool in my arsenal. But I try to really meet people where they are, because everybody's just sort of in a different place of their understanding, of their spirituality, of their healing. And so it can run the gamut from speaking to an audience of people, and it's just about mindfulness, and about resilience and things like that, from a place of just mindfulness. Then there are people who are very into intuition and spirituality, and I will speak to them at that level. And sometimes you find people at the mindfulness level, and then 6 months from now they want to know about astrology, and they want to know about numerology and all the other stuff. But I
Hmm.
never really try to such a hard sell on that stuff, because I've gotten many slaps on the face and learned the hard way that you can't force that to people. They have to come to it on their own. And it's the same sort of with religion too. You can't force someone to go to a building and say worship this.
Hmm.
That might not be where they're at. But as we've seen, sometimes some people leave religion, some people find religion, and that becomes their path. So I think you just have to meet people where they are and be okay with it, and not be so upset if somebody isn't going to think that your way. Because listen, I know sometimes, trust me, I teach workshops, and sometimes I will have hundreds of people in the workshop, and I will have people that will sit there and they will be taking notes, and they're
Hmm.
all into it. And then I'll have that camera off, not even listening to a word I'm saying person. And you definitely have to just have your own resilience to be like,
Hmm.
the people taking notes, that's where they are in their journey. And the people who are scrolling on TikTok while you're teaching a very powerful workshop, that's where they're at, and that's okay. Whatever they heard is what they needed to hear that
Exactly.
moment or that workshop.
Exactly. Whoever the message was intended for, it always reaches them.
Yeah.
And that has nothing, we're the vessel to
Yeah.
deliver the message, and
Yeah.
it's up to other people to receive it. But I'm really curious. I really would love to dig more into this because I'm the type of person, I love to learn a lot about different things.
Yeah.
You know, as I got older, I started to get exposed to a lot of different things, astrology, obviously, understanding more about my birth sign and like all these
Hmm.
different things. So I do have like a curiosity about this. How does this tie into healing, and how do you help people, I guess, get in tune with themselves and get out of the noise, whether it's traumatic noise in their life that they're getting out of, whether it's work noise, career noise, pressures, insecurities, fears, whatever it is. How do you bring these things together to help bring people out?
Yeah, that's a big question because there's so many elements to it. It's really getting to know people and their stories and where they started in life and
Mm-hmm.
understanding who were the people that raised them. That's the first step. Like, who were you raised by? Were you raised by a family that loved you? Did you feel safe and secure? Were you psychologically safe in your life? Where did you grow up? What cities, what towns,
Mm-hmm.
what culture did you grow up in? Then it's understanding their spirituality or what their belief systems are, their theologies, understanding that and going from there. And then it's really, and this is what I've learned through mindfulness, is understanding the brain and how the brain operates and why people do what they do, why everybody does what they do, because it's that
Yeah.
fight, flight, or freeze response that their brain is operating. It's understanding the operating system of the brain. I've been so blessed and grateful in my corporate career to interview many, many neuroscientists. And I'm like a neuroscience interviewer geek. Like, I
Yay.
just absolutely love them so much, and
Yes.
they've taught me so much. So it's helping people understand how their brain, and that's been a huge benefit to my own practices in life, is understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing, why my brain does what it does, then leaning back into mindfulness, which is being in the moment of now and trying to actually head it off at the past. So if I feel my central nervous system start to get dysregulated, if I feel fear welling up in me, then I can say, okay, I need to stop, acknowledge this right now. I need to sit down. Maybe I'm going to breathe, or maybe I'm going to power through because that's just what I'm going to have to do in this moment. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe I need to meditate and just, now that I know all of that stuff, I kind of know how to manage it and deal with it in the moment. And that's helped me. And then
Mm-hmm.
it goes even further into, once I get with some clients, like we'll talk about their astrology. We'll go deep dive into numerology and the numbers, and then we'll talk about their, what I call your soul contracts, your sacred contracts. Then we'll dive deep into past life. I say past in air quotes for a reason, but like we'll dive
Mm-hmm.
deep in their past lives and how that trauma can affect their life. And then, like, if people are open to that, that is the thing that opens up those black out curtains that we've had on our mind forever, is
Mm-hmm.
understanding that what's happening to you right now may also because it's happened somewhere else or it's happening somewhere else. That's been the huge thing. And then you see the light starts to come back into people, and that's really where it's like the moment of just like, okay, wow, this is really, really powerful. Like today I did something with one of my clients, and she didn't know I had the intuition gift, so we
Mm-hmm.
were more coming from a place of mindfulness, but I kind of felt like I was okay to use it, and so I used
Mm-hmm.
some of that I do in my, like, my more spiritual coaching. And she literally was like, wow, like, wow, I didn't know you could do that, but wow, like, how did you know that? And it really like opened the curtains, and I love that powerful moment when people just have that, like, whoa, okay, yeah, that is something that I needed to know, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
thing that's going to help me.
And you said something, the light comes on.
Yeah.
That's the whole intention of this podcast, is helping other women turn their light on.
Yeah.
And the idea of the halo, it's really, synonymous or symbolic of our mind and restoring that light to everything that's going on up here. Because
Yeah.
sometimes it gets really dark, it gets really scary, and it feels like we're in that place of pain
Yeah.
and trauma and triggers. So, and the story that you shared with your client, so what was the breakthrough? Like, what, if you could share just a little bit about what did you say? Like, what was the moment?
For, like, specific clients, but I can tell you just in
Hmm.
terms of like a general with all of my clients, is
Hmm.
I know from having worked with thousands of clients that if you, let's say, like, you have an injury to your wrist and you have no idea why you got injured. So we can figure out, first of all, what were you thinking in the moment? What were the beliefs about that? What subconscious, unconscious things were you holding on to? But at the same time, when I'm working with like past life healing, I might be able to find out that in another lifetime, that person is currently chained in a prison somewhere in some, Holy Roman Empire castle somewhere. And they're at this moment in time, in another lifetime, they're chained up. And so there's this thing with their wrist where they feel stuck and they can't get out of it. I can talk to you in general about clients who have terrified of water. And it comes up and I don't know that until we start doing our work. And then like in a past life, without me knowing that in this life, they are terrified of water and they don't go near the water and they don't go swimming, that they drowned back in
Wow.
the 15th century, and they got scurvy on the way over from Europe to America, and now they don't want to go on a boat. Like those things show up in people's experiences, and once you know that, it really helps to heal what that is. And it's not like, sometimes I've seen it where sometimes it literally is the thing that changes everything, and it's just like, okay, oh, now I'm going to go on the water. Like I remember one client wouldn't get on an airplane, would not get on an airplane until we figured out that they died in the war in an airplane, like in
No
a,
way.
yeah. And the next week booked a flight and was on an airplane. And I
Wow.
was just like, wow, that's amazing. But then in the same vein, I think, in the example of someone who, I see that they were chained up in a prison back during the Holy Roman Empire. That to me is someone who's still got a lot of work and processing to do. You don't just unchain yourself from fear and chaos. As we know, sometimes prisoners back in that era and many hundreds, thousands of years ago, they lived in those prisons for 40 years, right? Or they had to, build the pyramids and that took them 25 years and they were kind of stuck in that. So though that type of healing can take time, but if you continue to show up for your healing, I know because I've seen it and I've seen it on myself, you really can begin to change everything about yourself, begin to get rid of all of that cultural programming, all that societal programming, and start to really become energetically free.
Wow. This really resonates with me because, and it's culturally speaking, just the history of African Americans in general, right?
Yeah.
There is a history of slavery and being in chains, and that fear, that trauma gets passed down from generation to generation. And then in other, moments just in my childhood, experiencing that pain through the people who were supposed to be my guardians and
Right.
passing that trauma down to me. And how do you show up for your healing? I know you said you have to keep showing up. What does that look like for the women who are listening who are trying,
Yeah.
but they don't really understand what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong? What does showing up for your healing look like?
Well, I think that you're going back to mindfulness too about the awareness of that. So you're very aware that because of the cultural conditioning programming, the ancestral traumas that were experienced with your race, that is a part of your journey. I'm culturally Jewish. And so, I'm not just going to ignore what happened during the Holocaust to my family and the people around me. I know through my awareness of it that may show up in some way in my experience in my life and how I trust people. Maybe I don't trust people now, so
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing is be aware that there's all of these different facets of yourself, of your experiences in life, and be willing to look at it with a magnifying glass, to be willing to go deeper. And, as we know with ancestral trauma, it doesn't just go back the next generation. I mean, we're talking like generations since the caveman eras, some of us have been around our DNAs and we're still holding on to things like that. What I love also about past life stuff is you find out, can I swear on your podcast, by the way?
Yeah, you're
Okay.
fine.
You find out shit about the stuff that went on in the world that is not in history books that would blow your freaking mind. Like, I didn't know, because I've never seen it in a history book. I didn't know until I started working with clients and doing this type of work that when cavemen first had babies, they didn't understand what babies were. And so they killed them. They clubbed them. So they would, they would get the women pregnant. Women would get these
No.
big bellies. The babies would come out of them and then they would club them to death and throw them in the water because they didn't know what that was. Like, they were
Okay.
cavemen. Like, they had no idea. It took like a little bit for them to figure out, because the brain, right? The fear. Why did they fear the little babies? Because they were being chased by saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths and other scary things that they didn't really understand, that this, whatever this was something to love. And then eventually when they figured it out that it was something to love, then they stopped killing them and stopped putting them
Wow.
into the water, right? Like stuff like
Yeah.
that went on. That's just crazy. And how that continued to show up until we started to learn that we shouldn't do that anymore, and that babies are love, and all of that. And there's just things that go on our history of Earth that still show up and still can cause us pain. It's actually why I believe that sometimes babies will come out and they'll look like the fathers. That's so the fathers, going back to the caveman era, won't club the babies. And
Wow.
that still shows up. So I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, my baby came out, they look just like the dad." It's like, well, that is because of that. That's how
Survival
we do
mechanism.
survival mechanisms,
Yeah.
right? And the thing is about the brain is our brain isn't being clubbed. We're not being clubbed to death, right? Anymore. But our brain still feels emotional and mental things in that same way, right? So whatever was happening to us physically in other generations, in our ancestors, right? So whatever was happening thousands of years ago, and the wars and the fighting over invisible lines and sand, like those type of things, we may not be fighting physically in all places. We still are in some places, but in all places, but we certainly are still feeling the effects of the mental and emotional things as if we are being clubbed, right? That's what our brain thinks. And that's why it's trying to keep us alive and give us those sort of fight, flight, or freeze responses to ourselves. So we're having to overcome not only what's happening in our personal lives, but also what's been happening for, hundreds and thousands of years in this world too. So it's a constant understanding and awareness of all of that, and then trying to slowly back out of the room from it, to see it from that perspective where instead of being in the show, right? If it's a reality show and I'm in the reality show, it feels very real to me. I'm really trying to no longer be a character in the reality show, but actually be the producer of the reality show.
Yeah.
So I can maybe produce my experience a little bit different than it has been, if that makes sense.
It does. It really does. Everything that you're saying is making so much sense right now. And for me personally, I've always understood certain things with ancestral trauma as generational curses. That's something, that I hear a lot. Generational curses. We got to break these generational curses.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality, right? Of being aware that there are different programming and different energy that gets passed down that you just sort of have to navigate and deal with. And how do you not become depressed or sad at the reality that maybe you're carrying more than someone else has to carry? And how do you know, stay happy about your existence, about your present, staying mindful and present, even though you know that you have to do some mental acrobatics just to have a normal day?
I think you have to keep showing up. That's the first thing. I think
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
to gain that awareness of it. I think you have to really learn to separate yourself from it mentally and emotionally. And again, it goes back to like, if you're stuck in that, you're still your character in the show. Can you pull back the lens and become more of the producer of the show? Can you watch it as if it's a reality TV episode, and now you're like, oh, okay, I don't, you know what, if I were in that show, I wouldn't want to be in that show, right? So it allows you, and I think meditation and mindfulness allows you to kind of pull yourself back from it and see it through a different perspective. For me, and it took me a long time to get there, I mean, I used to get dragged into every circumstance and every horrible thing that was happening in the world. And it would hurt my heart. And all I wanted to do was fix everything. And that was hurting me, which is exactly what you're saying. People get stuck in that, and it's painful. It's painful to witness. It's painful to witness some of the things that go in the world and the horrible things that people say on social media, and just some of the stupidity that goes on in the world that people
Yeah.
do in service to ego and fear. But writing my books and given me a perspective where I can really separate myself from that in many ways. There's things that I definitely still get caught up in, but I'm very quickly able to be like, okay, I can see it through that lens. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. Like, listen, I fell down a flight of stairs and broke my wrist, and damn well did that freaking hurt. but I can either blame and say and blame everybody and this is an awful world, or I can take responsibility for the fact that I fell down the stairs, that I was the one that wasn't paying attention, that I was the one that had all sorts of shit in my hands that I probably could have put down. I not been in such a hurry and, having to multitask and do all these things at once. I would have had the hand on the railing that would have saved me from sliding down the staircase. So I was able to understand that my suffering was the responsibility of myself, and I had to take that and understand why it happened. Doesn't mean I wasn't in pain, doesn't mean I didn't take the Percocets to get me through the pain, and that I didn't go to physical therapy and I didn't heal it physically, but I also always am looking at what can I do to understand the suffering and how am I participate in it, and what's the cultural stuff around it, what's the societal stuff around it. And I think it's just always really being introspective. And if you think of like an arrow, right? So are you pointing that arrow outward? Are you pointing that arrow inward? Or can you point the arrow up and know that it has something to do with something bigger than all of us?
That was a true gem. Oh my God, I can't wait to share this podcast interview to everyone because you're going to set a lot of people free just from taking the reins and
Yeah.
taking the accountability of what we can handle within our own healing journey instead of kind of adapting that victim mentality. But I do want to talk about your books because I know you have 4 books and the titles, The All of Everything, The All of All, The All That Is, Wisdom of the All. What is the all? And I would love to just get into that what does that mean?
So if you ever heard the book Conversations with God, my books, I always say, are a modern day conversations with God. The all represents the pointing arrow up. The all represents that something bigger than all of us, which is the reason why we're all here. And I like whatever word works for you is great. Whether you call that God, whether you call that the universe, whether that's Allah to you, whether it's Muhammad, whether it's Jesus, like so Yahweh, there's so many different words for Adonai. I could keep going.
Yeshua. Yeah.
Right, exactly. There's so many words that we can use for it, but
Yeah.
it's the acknowledgement that we're not here by some random occurrence, that there is something larger and bigger than all of ourselves. The all represents that bigger thing. And then it also represents that bigger thing is also all of us sort of coming together as one. So that you are part of the all. You are the all of the all. You are the all of everything. You are the all of that is. So the word is God to you, and God exists as something bigger than our individual self. You are also a piece and part of that bigger thing too. And when you understand that you are not alone in this world, that you didn't get tossed onto planet Earth with no mechanism for change and transformation, then you start to really get the keys to the kingdom, right? The tools. So the biggest tool that I use, it's actually in the Bible. It says to receive, right? He who asks receives. If you don't ask, you don't receive. That's the other opposite of that. So whatever we're trying to change about ourselves, there has to be an asking. I always call it the ATM moment, the at the moment. When you go to the ATM, you stick your card in, you put the numbers in, you ask for something, and then it brings you the money out, right? And you get that. So that is the law of attraction. It's the law of the universe, the law of one. There's a million names for that too. That when you put something out, some energy out, you receive something back. So it works exactly the same with everything else. If I want to change my mind, I'm not going to be able to change my mind at the level of my human self. I have to acknowledge that I am here under something bigger, and I can ask for that, whatever that is. And for me, it's the all, to help me change my mind. And as soon as I open the door, then that part is the all says, okay, now you're acknowledging that you're not here by yourself. And so we're going to help you. And it becomes, and this goes back to mindfulness, about being in now. Because at the moment of now is where everything changes. And whatever we're trying to change, we have to change it in now. So if you like how your life is going, good job. Like you've been doing the work and you've been setting intentions and you've been doing your healing. If you don't like what's currently happening in your life, then you're continuing at some point in your nows to still be a victim, to still be mad at the world, to still be blaming people, to still be scrolling through and making decisions from the level of your fear and your ego and your brain that wants to keep you alive. And if you don't like what's happening around you, then you have to take responsibility in now to say, all right, I'm going to set a new intention. I'm not going to let this fear overtake me. I'm going to hand that fear over to God, to the source, to the universe, to the all, and say, help me, please help me. And one more thing I'll say about that is I try to break words down into true meanings from the source, from the all. So when you use the word help, I always tell people help is healing everything love placed. So what does that mean? It means that at the level of the source, at the level of God or the universe, we gave ourselves these horrible, sometimes people have really bad challenges, and sometimes people have, smaller drizzles, right? But we gave ourselves those challenges in order to come back to worse, right? In order to become who we truly are. So when we acknowledge that we need help, we are starting to heal what was placed in our midst to move beyond. And the answers are waiting for you. They're just waiting for you to say, yes, like, help me. I have to acknowledge it. And honestly, like, it works with big things and it works with small things. I literally had a situation where my mom, we were in London, and she had she walks with a mobility little scooter, and the airline broke it. I won't say what airline because I settled with them, but they broke her little mobility scooter, and I was panicked. I was on a 3-week trip. I was like, what the heck am I going to do? My mom can't walk. I was in the panic. I was having a nervous system breakdown, and I was scrolling on the internet and nothing was working. And then I sat there for a few minutes and I was like, what am I doing? Why am I not practicing what I preach? So I sat there for a moment, closed my eyes, and I said, all right, universe, I don't know what to do here. I've tried everything I can and I just need help. What do I do here? And then I put it aside and I tried to go to bed and I couldn't sleep. So I decided to get back up on the internet, and I had this download to do one more thing, to look up one more thing. So I looked one more thing up, and then all of a sudden, and you would think I would have found it a long time ago, but I hadn't asked to receive. I found a website that is in London where they can get you something if you order it by midnight, and it was literally like 11:50. You can get it by 9 a.m. And
No
so
way.
I went and I ordered it at whatever time, 11:50, and then I was able to go pick it up at 9 a.m. And it gets even wilder and crazier. I had to walk to get to the item, to the store. And then we were going to take a taxi back, but the taxis and the traffic was so bad. So I decided that I was just going to walk, and I was like, whatever, it's heavy, but we'll be fine. I was with my son. So 4 minutes into our walk, we're coming around the corner, and I kid you not, there was an empty shopping cart, working perfectly. The wheels worked. There was nothing inside of it. And so I was like, okay, I'm just, thank you, universe. I'm going to just plop this
Right.
heavy thing, and I'm going to roll that little thing. I have video of that too. I'm going to roll this
Wow.
and get it back to my mom. And I know, had I not stopped in that moment to acknowledge that I couldn't do it myself and I couldn't figure it out and I needed help, that we would have struggled in our trying to figure it out. I had no idea what I would have done the next morning. We just would have spent another day trying to figure it out.
And you could have planned it yourself, and you couldn't have planned that out.
Yeah.
It took having that divine download
Right.
after surrendering in spirit,
Yeah.
and also being honest. That honesty thing again. That honest that you need help. That
Right.
I cannot do it on my own right now, and this is way beyond my strength. That is
That's
amazing story.
that's the myth too, by the way. Going back to the original question at the beginning about like what are some of the myths? I think some of the myths around that are that people are waiting for the lightning bolt. They are like, I prayed and I asked for a miracle, and they are waiting for the Red Sea to part, right? They're waiting for that big giant miracle. Yeah. And sometimes the miracle is you get that little voice in your head that's like, let's try this right now. Phone rings and it's your auntie, and your auntie's like, how you doing today? You know what? I was just looking this up. You should try and that's the person who got their own little download. I'm going to call up my niece and see what she needs right now. Sometimes the miracle is so subtle that we miss it, and then we just like brush it off. But like, we get miracles in now, like we get miracles in the moment. And when you are in now, when you're in the moment and you're not thinking ahead and you're not thinking behind, you're not in a yesterday, or you're not worrying about tomorrow, those subtle things are there waiting for you. And I think if people could understand that and just begin to put all the distraction and the noise away, we would hear more, we would see more, and then all of a sudden, that's when this world collectively would begin to change.
Wow. Wow. That's a total mic drop. So just letting you guys know, the title of this episode was Truly Happy: How Mindfulness Can Help You Unlock Inner Joy. And I feel like we just got to that gem of answering that question of how to unlock inner joy. So while we're on this in this moment, and I know I only have a few minutes left with you, so I want to make sure I ask you this. For a woman who is in process of healing her halo, turning the light back on, what is that number one thing to unlock that inner joy and turn that light back on? Is it listening to the now? Is it being disciplined that moment when you hear that small voice?
Yeah, I think that's it. I've been doing a lot of work in the last couple of weeks around the concept of now, which is why it's so perfect, of course, synchronicity that we're talking about mindfulness. And really writing and working on quotes about now, that whatever you're trying to change for tomorrow, you have to start now. And whatever is happening right now started in an earlier now. So if you just think of every moment, that's the most important moment. What am I thinking in this moment? What am I believing in this moment? As soon as we start to feel our nervous system going crazy, we feel the anxiety, we feel the stress. It's first acknowledging it. It's not brushing it under the rug and trying to do toxic positivity and oh, let me just meditate. No, I'm acknowledging that I'm stressed out and anxious right now. And you know what? I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to do something to work towards that. Whether it's for me, and I'll just tell you the things that I do. It's either I'll sit down and breathe and try to breathe through it and get out whatever that is. I'll literally pick, like I did this today. I'm not kidding. Like, it's not a plug, but I literally was having a moment and my book was sitting right here. So I just grabbed my book and I turned to like, there's a chapter about toxins in our life. And I turned to that chapter and I knew that was what I was needing to hear. And it was all about the things that like interrupt our nervous system. And so I was like, okay. And the number 7 thing was social media. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a little TikTok break or take an Instagram break because I know that that's bugging me, right? I'm constantly writing intentions. I'm trying to figure stuff out. If something's not working, I'll go to my journal and I'll just start writing, what do I want now? What do I not want now? So I do journaling. I'll write my books. I'll write quotes. And honestly, for me, I think working with clients actually helps me a lot because I believe we're mirrors of one another. So whatever I'm saying to somebody, I'm like, I needed to hear that. Yeah. Like even you and I having a conversation, as I'm talking to you, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I needed to hear that again today. And I just don't stop. And I got to be honest, because I'm authentic. There are days literally where when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, fuck, do I have to get up? Like, I don't want to face the day. Oh, I got this to do. Or I feel, or the moon is making me crazy today, or whatever. My dog is driving me crazy. There's just those moments that are not pleasant or suck, or I'm watching something and I see it and it just makes me sad and upset. And those moments happen and I'll sit in it for a while. But what I do is I just keep moving forward, no matter what it is, because I now know, having been through this for the last 10 or so years, there is a yin to your yang. You have a shitty day today, probably in a day or two, you're going to have a better day. I've said this many times on Clubhouse, back when Clubhouse was big in like 2020 during the pandemic. And it was about, like, we were talking about the Red Sea, like, and even like the metaphor of Jesus on the cross, like it's that 3 days. So when you're on the cross, when you're nailed to the cross with your thinking, with your tragedy, just know that it takes 3 days for the resurrection, right? So you don't just like get off that nailed to the cross feeling and that emotion and that pain on day 1. It takes that resurrection. You need a little bit of time in order to break free of that. So when people are really struggling, I usually will say to them, just give it 3 days, right? Give yourself that 3 days, because I guarantee that your Red Sea is going to part on day 3 or 4, and then you're going to feel a little bit better. And even after the parting of the sea, listen, we wandered through the desert for 40 more years. So there is going to be a wandering part of your life as well. There is going to be still that seeking and that searching. But at the end of the day, we have the proof that love prevails always, right? There is always a miracle that happens. And sometimes, and I'll be truly authentic, sometimes the miracle is the leaving, right? So we think that death is the worst thing that can happen to us. But I talk to enough dead people as a medium to tell you that a lot of times that's the release and the gift and the blessing. And not saying I don't want to continue my life, because I do, because I like the roller coaster here on earth. But just
Definitely a
knowing
roller coaster.
sometimes that's the release, right? That's like the end of the suffering. And then when you get to the other side, and this is what I've learned as a medium as well, they always sign up to come back. So what does that tell you? People live these lives and they cross over, and then when they're there, they say, I'm going to come back again. There must be something to it, right? There must be something that we, at the level of our human mind, our human brain, cannot understand, that we'll never understand until we leave our earthly world behind, that makes everybody who signed up want to come back and do this dance again. So your ancestors that went through the tragedies that they went to, even when they crossed over and they left this all behind, they still said, I want to do it again, because they got rid of the programming and the conditioning that we have at the human level. And now they're able to see it as the producer of the series and not the actor and the cast of the series. So they want a sequel, right?
I love this analogy so much. It's so straightforward and it makes so much sense to put it in this way. And Laura, I don't want to keep you too long, and I value and I appreciate your time with us today. And it's been so healing. It has been healing. It's been eye-opening. It's been a shockwave of just good information, just good actionable information. Give it 3 days for things to pass. If there's any final thoughts or any final words that you could say to a woman right now that could help her not give up on her journey, what would that be?
Look for the miracles, look for the blessings. Sometimes we see the world as such a mess and we think there's no end. And then the universe will show us things and take us to places where we realize that that's not true. I just was at a women's shelter just 2 days ago and was able to witness, it's the largest women's shelter in the world. And I was able to witness the love that they're pouring into people who, through no fault of their own, are homeless or victims of domestic violence, who thought they had no hope, found this place, and then all of a sudden they're being loved on and cared for. And they have, I think, 85 to 90% success rate. When people leave there, they go out and they find jobs and they live these more passionate existence. But it is a daily process. You can listen to this podcast. You can listen to a self-help book. You can go sit in church and be so inspired that next day you're like, I'm going to live my dreams, and yes. And then the next day you watch a social media video of some influencer who's got 1 million followers and you got 10, and you're like, this sucks and everybody hates me. And you go right back, because that's the habit loop of our brain. And so it is constant. You have to show up every goddamn freaking moment, not just day, every moment, to overcome that little fight or flight response in your body, right? So when it comes around, you just have to keep dealing with it. And it was the proof that you can get out of it, because I know you've had happy days. I know you had a great day. I know there's been times where your friends were hugging on you, or your baby just makes you feel, or your cat or your puppy or whatever it is. I know that exists. I know you've had that moment. So when you have the shittiest moment, go back to that feeling for just a moment. If I have a really bad moment, I actually will just pet my dog for a second, and that usually helps me get out of it.
Aww.
So look for those little pockets to help you when you're having those. And then the great thing, and I'll leave with this sort of uplifting part, is the great thing is when you continue to show up for your healing, those spaces get larger and larger. So if you had a month of just a pity party and you feel horrible and you're going through it, and just physical pain, chronic pain, whatever it is, emotional pain, if you keep showing up, the next time maybe it'll be 3 weeks, and then maybe it'll be 2 weeks. And then maybe you get to a point where in your life where you have 5 or 6 bad days. And then eventually you get to a point in your life where you just have a bad day. Right. Yeah. And that's a miracle in and of itself. And when you're able to witness, and that's what I've witnessed within my own experience, is when I just keep showing up, my time in the rabbit hole has just been so much less. And that's what helps me get out of those rabbit holes, because it's not like I don't get in them. I just don't stay in them.
Wow. You are truly, I love your personality, number one. I
Yeah.
think you are really funny. Like you have like such a bubbly personality that just makes it feel okay. To just be human, to
Right.
have, these moments and these bad days. How can we make sure that we stay connected with you and your voice and the movement of what you're doing? Where are you? How can we find you?
Well, stay connected with yourself. That's the first thing,
Well,
right?
very true.
Right. Stay connected to you first. First, look to yourself, right? Second,
Yes.
look to whatever that bigger, power that you believe in. Third, look for people who will be your cheerleader and your champion, and follow them. So if you want to follow me, I'm at Laura Saltman on Instagram and TikTok and pretty much everywhere else. My books are on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles, so you can find them. And I do work with clients one-on-one to kind of do like the spiritual stuff and work on different aspects of yourself, from your archetypes to your past lives to mediumship to numerology, and all the spiritual tools that I love to work with too.
Wow. Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much for being here today. You've helped me, and just like I feel like I've had a personal masterclass right now. So I do appreciate your time and your energy today. Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
your service. Thank you for inviting me here. I know that we were called to work together and come together for a reason. And whether it's one person who listens or whether it's 1,000, the people who needed to hear it will hear it. That's how it works. And so instead of worrying about how many, just serve. Just serve in whatever way you're called to serve.
I received that. I received that. And this has been another episode of Healing Her Halo. Make sure you guys stay connected and share this with someone if you feel like it touched you. Hopefully, it can touch another woman's halo and help her heal. All right.